Hey everybody, I hope you're doing well today. A quick little invitation to all of you IB Economics students to head on over to my website, bradcartwright.com, a website designed to help you improve your scores in IB Economics, whether that be on an in-class quiz, a test, or ultimately the IB exam. So if you want some more information, check out the description box below. And other than that, enjoy this video. All right, so here we go. Now, the protective tariff diagram starts off in the same place that all of the diagrams in free trade and protectionism begin, and that is with this free trade diagram. If you do not know how to draw this free trade diagram, check out that video up above that will guide you through the basic steps of drawing this diagram that you're seeing on the screen right now, because this diagram right here is the free trade diagram. You have to understand how this diagram functions in order to understand the impact, in this case, of a protective tariff, okay? So, but also you need to understand this base diagram in order to understand what happens with a protective subsidy. You also need to understand this diagram to understand what happens with the protective quota. Because in economics, my friends, there is always a story, and the story begins in one place, and in the unit of free trade and protectionism, or anything related to trade, this diagram is the beginning of the story, the free trade diagram. So check out that video up above. Okay, so what happens in a tariff? Well, the thing about a tariff is you got to understand the logic of why they would put a tariff in place in the first place, okay? So what's the beginning of the story? With the free market diagram, we're talking about the market for corn. We got price. We got a currency, usually a dollar. We got P1, Q1. We have the demand curve, D1. We have the supply curve of the domestic supply curve of S domestic, and we also have this perfectly elastic line called the world supply curve. As a result of this, we have Q1, Q2, and Q3. So what do these stories begin? Well, what do these stories tell? Well, in the beginning, the story begins always in the diagrams on this series of P1, Q1, right? So before this country, and let's call it, doesn't matter. Let's call it the United States, right? Before the market for corn in the United States was open to international producers of corn, P1, Q1 was where the market operated, okay? But then the United States opened up its market for corn, and as a result of that, the equilibrium quantity, price quantity combination went from P1, Q1 to PW, Q2. So the price dropped to from P1 to PW, and as a result, all of these people can now afford corn. That's pretty cool, right? And so the market is operating out here at PWQ2. This is where the free trade diagram market begins. Now, that seems good, because if you can if all of these demanders can now buy corn, you would think that's good. But guess what happens on the flip side of that? Well, before the market in the United States was open to corn, all of these, world corn, all of these producers could participate in the marketplace. But because the United States decided to open up to the world market, the price dropped from P1 to PW, and as a result, boom, all of these suppliers of corn in the United States could no longer play the game. Ciao. They are out of business. They literally lose the farm, okay? So at the PW price range, the price level, the only corn that is produced in the United States is representative of the distance between 0 and Q3. This first part of the domestic supply curve, these are the only farmers that are producing corn in the United States. Then once we get to the PW level, all of these producers in the United States are relatively inefficient and incapable. And so where does the corn come from? Outside the United States, outside the United States, outside the United States. So therefore, this quantity of corn from Q3 to Q2 is the quantity of corn coming in from outside the United States. Wow, For demanders, that's good. For producers in the United States, that's terrible. And so what's going to happen? Well, you know what's going to happen. Come on. A politician's going to get involved and say, listen, let's protect our farmers. We can't have our farmers going broke because someone's buying corn from the Ukraine, someone's buying corn from Europe, right? No, we need to protect our farmers. And what they're going to do is they're going to put in a tariff to protect what? You got to understand the name of this. To protect domestic suppliers of corn. All right, so what's that going to look like? Well, for a tariff, what that's going to look like is a vertical line. Oh, wrong pen. That's going to be a vertical line, or sorry, a horizontal line going all the way across there. Okay? And this is going to be labeled SW plus the tariff. Okay? And this level right here is going to be PWT. All right? Price world plus tariff. Okay, so now what happens? I'm going to clean this up in a bit, and we'll look at a little better version of this. But if you just quickly take a look, you'll notice that we have a new equilibrium point, right? Remember, we went from P1Q1 down to PWQ2. This is where the market was operating before. But if there's a tariff put on it, which is a minimum price, a cost rather, an additional cost to get corn into the United States, then all of a sudden the price of corn is going to rise up to where? To PW plus T, and that's going to create a new equilibrium in the market for corn in the United States right here, right? And so that is going to be Q4, and we have another intersect right here, which we'll talk about in a second, okay? So just to draw the diagram, that's what it looks like. Now, that doesn't look too great, but if I clean it up a little bit, you will see that this is the exact same diagram, right, with some variables put in here, some letters put in here to recognize or to represent these different areas of revenue. But before we get to that, right, we were operating at PWQ2, the tariff gets put in place, and now all of a sudden we're operating at PW plus T Q4. Okay, now something interesting has happened, right? Remember, those producers of corn in the United States before the tariff were only represented by this part of the line. But now with the tariff, because it raised the price of corn in the United States, what happens? Hey, all of these producers of corn in the United States can now stay in the game. Yeah, baby, that politician saved the day, saved these farmers from going out of business. That is all exciting, but what happened? The price of corn went up from there to here, and there's a trade-off, and therefore all of these demanders of corn can no longer buy it because it's too expensive. Okay, so now this series is meant to just how to draw the diagram, and pretty much that's it right there. Like, that's how you draw it. That is the protective tariff diagram. But what are all these variables? Well, these variables are critical, so it's very important to label all of the areas, triangles, and rectangles in here with a particular variable. So we have A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K. And these can be any variables you want, it doesn't matter. But all we're doing is using these to represent areas on this diagram so that we can talk about several different things. The first thing, right, and look for other videos in the series about how to actually calculate all of this. But if you think about it, before the market was open for corn, before they put the tariff, how much corn was being produced in the United States? A, B, right, from here to here. Boom, just that, before the tariff. What about after the tariff? Well, after the tariff, and before the tariff, well, how much was coming from world producers? C, D, E, and F, right? All of this. But then the tariff was put in place, and as a result, all of these producers in the United States continued. So now after the tariff, A, B, C, G, and H, these revenues, or PW plus T, Q5, all of that revenue is going to U.S. producers. Hey, that's pretty cool. Well, what about the world producers? Well, the world producers used to be C, D, E, F, but now the price has gone up to there, so F is gone, and this is being produced by domestic producers, so C is gone, and so international is only represented, world producers, D and E. Why not I and J? Because I and J represent the money that goes into the government's pocket as a result of the tariff, okay? So if I were to put some colors on this, right, this is going to be post-tariff domestic revenue. This is going to be post-tariff world revenue, yeah? And this is going to be the government income as a result of the tariff. And then there's one last little thing, which is very important, which is the welfare loss. And H and K represent the welfare loss as a result of the new inefficiency in the marketplace, okay? So this green area, including the H, domestic revenue post-tariff. DE, this is world revenue post-tariff. I and J represents government revenue as a result of the tariff. H is a misallocation of resources or welfare loss because these people should have been out of business, but they're in business as a result of the tariff. And K is also welfare loss as a result of the fact that before the tariff, the government intervention, we were operating out here at Q2, but as a result of the tariff, the price rose, and all of this is lost, okay? And F was former world revenue, but it's gone now, okay? So I hope that makes sense, right? It's a pretty complicated diagram. There's a lot of analysis and a lot of evaluation that goes into it, but in this diagram, or in this series, we're just looking at how to draw. Well, there you have it, my friends. I hope you enjoyed that video. If you want more information on the subscriptions available for IB Economics students around the world, check out the description box below. All right, my friends, a reminder to be good to yourselves out there. Be kind to someone today, and we'll talk to you in a bit.